either, but is to go back and really look at coming back here with a proposal of what would be a fair way to split this cost between the counties. And my thought is that Plumas County is the largest piece of this pattern, and with Butte, their portion of the IRWM part is not the whole county by any means. So obviously you wouldn't have a huge piece of it. And Sierra has a larger geographic area, but less population in that geographic area because it's generally Sierra Valley and agricultural large properties. So I've thought about acreage in each of the areas that are part of IRWM. I've thought about population, and then I've thought if somebody were more brilliant than I am with math, because Berkeley doesn't teach a lot of math. All right, then when I was there. But somebody that's brilliant about being able to figure out a combination of acreage and population to be a fair division. I know we've looked in Plumas County's budget at funding some of these contracts. But by the same token, I think that if we really want to progress with this, we need to have enough money to have our staff people working on it, number one. And number two, we should have a certain pot that would enable us to go out and assist some of these districts and areas to build their capacity in order to help them go seek money for their projects. I mean, I know everybody would like to be folded into one big project, not have to do a lot, but there's a lot of money out there. It's just the capacity to know it's there and go get it. So I don't know what the rest of the group thinks about that, but it seems to me that it's a good investment on the part of the counties into regions. So I'm open for discussion on throwing that out on the table.
Well, it seems like it's a good idea. I mean, I don't have any negative thoughts on what you're saying. The problem that I have is the sequential part of this. If this grant comes through, would that be the capacity that we would need, that we wouldn't have to split the money because that money's coming from over here? Is there this, what is probably concerning me is this calendar of events that there might be some overlying time, that there could be some grant funding coming out prior to the time that we have finished with our planning process. So how do we apply for a grant when we're in the process of planning for grants? It is, to me, that's what I can see the problem to be, if that's correct. You can say yes, no, or kind of.
That has been brought up at the coordinating committee meetings, and I think what they're trying to do is EWR is aware of that, and they're trying to adjust things a little bit. So it was planned that the second round, which is going to be, I think the draft will be released at the end of fall, I guess, fall of this year. We're hoping to solicit for projects in the spring. Was going to be specifically for that $1.3 million of DAC implementation funding. But what they're looking at doing now is splitting that and including both DAC implementation and implementation funding for that second round, so that they can hold some of that over for the next round. So it doesn't, I mean, it's not a huge help, but they're trying to.
As Leah pointed out, that just is vulnerable for us, right? To be picked off again, once again, by larger groups that can come in, because we're still fiddling around in the woods while the big guys and boys and girls come in and go, whoop, and take all the money.
Well, one of the changes that Lauren was talking about is we pushed the capacity and technical assistance forward. So we're not completing all the planning before we're providing technical assistance to communities that are more ready to go.
Good.
Because we know it's going to be a rolling thing, that especially in the Butte County area, some of those communities we're just going to be finding for the first time, but in other areas, we know they're there, we know what they need, and we just have to help everybody package things and get them in. And so one of the big changes we had as the DAC coordinating committee is to let all these horses go at the speed that they can go and make sure nobody gets left behind, but let the forward runners go, because other people are already banging the door down, and if we wait.
That's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
And apparently you're doing that in this.
That's one of the changes that we made. Okay. So I think,
that would address where you're coming from, and hopefully we can get ahead of it instead of trying to chase back. That's the concern that I would have, just to add to your concern.
Right.
that we're always behind it. We never get caught up because we don't have the money to get caught up. But this sounds like we plan ahead, we might be able to sneak by.
That's it. And, you know, as I sit and listen to 1.3 million, 1.3 million, 15 million, you know, I'm kind of like, this is a lot of money. It's almost hard to wrap your arms around it.
500.
But then the bottom line is, how do we get from here to there? Because, for instance, if Plumas County were to say we are not going to fund anything further for IRWM, I don't know who's going to pay for your time, or your time that does IRWM work, or Randy's time. So that's where my concern is a level of funding to keep our staff able to get out there and do all the meetings and all the things you're doing. And I realize that in some cases you're working with Sierra Institute, you have to, and so on and so forth. I don't know what level of funding is coming to pay you for that time, but that time, you know.
Not for Leah, right?
No, UMA and, you know, other people apply. But we want to carry on, especially in the tribal piece and some of the communities we identified in Butte, and some of these people we've just found, that's where we kind of want to push ahead, I think,
Well,
still,
and
and keep them.
that leads me to my original question is, how do we pay for doing exactly that, for your time to do that? So I guess what I'm asking is that we give some thought, both staff and committee members, to how do you think would be the fair way of figuring that out? And then with staff, how much money are we talking about? Now, I'm thinking, I've heard figures bandied around 35 to 40,000, but I'm thinking that's probably pretty close to bare bones. So, I don't know, but I think we need to, before the next meeting, come up with an idea of how much money do we really think we need, maybe the most bare bones to get by, and then if God blessed us with everything we wanted, how much would that be? You know, some kind of criteria for us to look at, to talk about, and at the same time to think in terms of, okay, so we arrive at this figure. Now, how do we apportion out who pays what? Because obviously I don't think, as I said, that it would be fair to expect Butte County to pay a third and Sierra County to pay a third. So at some point, we gotta figure out how do we apportion that out.
You know, maybe for the first 1 or 2 years, the way you mentioned by population and land size, you know, I don't know how many, you know, water treatment facilities exist for these DACs in Plumas County, but the areas of Butte County, you know, they're individual septic or individual wells. Sterling City, which isn't designated a DAC on the DAC map that's on the IRWM website, they have like a group kind of septic system that's failing. So maybe in the future, you know, as projects come in, the areas that are getting the grants, maybe it gets weighted to them for the future. But for the initial startup of this process, I think you're onto the most fair way to look at it. But I would imagine that, you know, a lot of these communities up here have wastewater treatment facilities that probably the community can't really fund. So those will probably rise to the top as the likely fundable projects. And to me, at that point, the county or the areas that are benefiting should be that those administrative portions of that grant should be funding the IRWM staff.
Right.
Because I kind of see it like a fire safe council. And, you know, I don't know when these other grants beyond this 1.3 and the other DWR, who's going to be administering those grants, and will it be the IRWM creating, like, you know, kind of the administrative capacity that like a fire safe council does. So I don't know, I'm learning, so.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, I mean, I think we're still learning about the issues in Butte County. Obviously, we tried in the plan development, but I don't think we got drilled down to some of the systems. Certainly, we didn't get projects from Butte County, and we need to talk about that probably at the next meeting about where soliciting projects to get them in the queue. So, you know, I'm sitting here going, well, I worked for Butte County one time, but I have no real clear idea of the capacity needs that you're talking about. I did know about a big redwood septic tank at one point that needed replaced, but that was around 2000. The other thing is the Roundtable of Regions, and I'm kind of hooked into that. Some people from Ventura area, Ventura County area, and they're advocating for consistent funding for IRWMs. I think about $250,000. So I try to pay attention to those meetings, listen in if I can. I think the next one might be in Metropolitan Water District.
Yeah, you know that.
But what that group is trying to do is bring together some force to get some funding, so ongoing IRWM implementation activities. Certainly that would change our picture big time. If all of a sudden we had that kind of money, and we were looking at grant writers, and I think at some point it was going to go through these capacity grants today, but there's a number of grants out there that we could be applying for without any capacity. It's very difficult. So
Right, exactly.
I don't know where that effort's going to go. I'm going to continue to try to pay attention to it.
So in a way, then, what I've been talking about, if that were to take place, would be kind of a bridge situation to get us from here to there.
Yeah.
And I would hope that the state does see the merit in putting some more funding toward the effort, because, yeah, maybe large places have the staff that they can serve it, but the rural counties and rural areas don't have that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought the Sierra Institute, at least for the finding the communities, that's part of their work plan
Yes.
and outreach. So we'll discover more of Butte County and the rest
Right.
of our partner counties as well. But on the work plan task that has the schedule and the budget, how much of that is paying for UMA's time of that 1.3 total that's outlined there? Is that all going to Sierra Institute, or is some of that?
Yeah, Sierra Institute would be the grantee, so
So-
it's all going to Sierra Institute and they're
Just part of
contracting
that.
out.
She's not, it's not, yeah.
I'm part of the team
Oh, under,
under Sierra
Okay.
Institute, so I'll be doing some work on it, and I don't think we've hashed out exactly who's doing what yet, but I'll be participating in the task 4 activities, I believe.
but your role here today
It's different.
is different.
It's different.
Okay, so that's
Right.
what you're
See,
looking for. Okay,
Exactly.
got
It
it
has
now.
been, I can't even remember now what we contracted over the years, because there's been a couple of them, but when we started this process, we contracted with UMA to be our coordinator and consultant, and she's done an excellent job. So what we're saying is, we want to keep her in that capacity at this level, whereas she's, like she said, almost like subcontracting with Sierra Institute on the 1.3. So that doesn't pay for any of her time doing our stuff, although we benefit from
So the 1.3 can't pay for her time
No.
it here.
or her role for this group?
Well, I wish
No.
it could, but knowing
Okay.
Jonathan,
Right.
I don't think
I don't think
he'd see
the rules
it that
allow
way.
that.
Yeah.
We're now finishing this fiscal year, the board, Plymouth Board supported continuing UMA's efforts with us with $10,000 of funds, and that doesn't count my contribution and staff time. This budget year, I had proposed $25,000 for UMA. And you gotta remember that first 10 was only for half a year, because we finished the plan essentially at the end of the calendar year. So, this is where Sherry's at, looking at the numbers. I don't really know how much time I'm going to have to put into it, but right now, working with UMA, at least in terms of the Plymouth County budget, it's $25,000 for continuing work on the IRWM as our coordinator, helping with the meetings, and some other tasks that you're going to talk about, I think, later. So I give you some idea what, right now, Plymouth County's carrying the ball, at least financially. I think what Sherry's saying is maybe we need to look at how we could split that a little bit differently so Plymouth County wouldn't be carrying all of it. There would be a portion somehow fair, and I think Sherry was very clear about that, how to move forward. We have right now, I think the only adopted Prop 1 compliant IRWM in the state of California. We should be taking advantage of that in some ways. And I think that's where Plymouth County is committed at this point, I think, to the final budget's not adopted, but to move forward
Right.
with keeping it alive. And so we're saying, well, we should think that other counties should help. I know there's Sierra Valley Groundwater District is basically without financial capacity, and I have no idea where the RCDs are sitting, but I'm gonna guess.
No capacity.
No capacity, and in financial and probably very limited capacity to even apply for grants. So.
Well, and my first thought was, everybody signed on the MOU as part of this, and they also figured, and then I thought, that the problem is nobody has any money, nobody has money for staff, you know, and so our whole purpose is to try to help them get in a position where they are financially viable and can do these projects. And the only deep pockets I could think of were the counties. And frankly, I'm not sure those pockets are.
So ours is less deep. We're in a
Yeah.
deficit this year.
That is for sure.
The Upper Feather River IRWM program, we just finished up a pretty major grant of $7 million, but unfortunately, and I wasn't involved in it, when it was applied for, there was no administration money for the county to administer the grant. We eventually manipulated the grant with some projects and broke loose about $250,000, which helped pay for UMA's assistance in doing the invoicing and some of our costs, my costs, Leah's costs, that we've been involved in it. But we haven't had the advantage of having a series of grants that would build up a pot of money administratively to make us more viable to continue to apply for grants in the future. That's kind of what organizations do, is they get their grants and they build up their capacity. We haven't had that opportunity in this Upper Feather River region.
The other thing, there is these coordinating committees that oversee this grant, and, you know, we have appointees. Butte has Vicky right now, you know, and part of what we've been taking on, I think, is coordinating committee is doing some advocacy. You know, telling DWR, you know, save some of that money for the second round, because the poorest people are not gonna be ready on the first round. And all those windows for comments are opening up right now. And so the other thing that we're really looking for support is to do a little hard hitting and to make sure that these programs continue to do what we want. And I like Roundtable of Regions, but, you know, they're Southern California, and Ventura is not what I call a poor community. And so, you know, we're kind of on our own, and getting the mountain counties area all working together was something people couldn't even imagine. We're going to beat the San Joaquin. We won't be the last horse out of the gate, but we're behind the North Coast by years, and we're behind all these other regions. So we're going to have to hold the money back while we catch up, and that's advocacy. So we'll probably be coming back to this group with some letters, comment letters, that we want you guys to look at and hopefully support, to kind of ask DWR, if you're serious about this, give us a chance. You know,
Well, and that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, because we depend on our consultants to attend these meetings and to coordinate and advocate on our behalf, and certainly none of us have the time or expertise to do it. But it's not really fair to expect them to do it out of the goodness of their heart, because that doesn't pay the rent. So that circles me right back to where I started out with. We need to think about discussing this with our respective boards, and ask staff and Uma and Leah to kind of think about how much money are we talking about? You know, because your 25 was Leah's or Uma's contract, but that still doesn't include any of your time,
Right.
or any of Leah's time. So it's somewhere above 25. I got that much. Even Berkeley taught me that. But beyond that, I don't know where it goes. So I think that, you know, we need to come back to our next meeting with how much money are we talking about, and maybe some options of how to refund this and split that cost out.
I would wish that Paul was here because somehow we need to communicate that to Sierra County.
That's what I
We've done it
said.
with Butte, and thank you for being here. but
It's too
Sierra
bad they
County's
aren't
not here.
I'll communicate to Paul. Have to get a couple bottles of wine probably to get the point across. but-
So Sherry, on the Sierra Institute, the staff recommendation is, do we have any comments? And I don't have any comments at this time. Is it reasonable to expect that the final draft will be at our next meeting and then we'd approve their work plan? Or what's the future for this?
We're taking comments for this draft until the 23rd, and then we're gonna have another draft out the 30th, and we're hoping to get it in soon after that. So when is your meeting?
So yeah, it's in the next 2 weeks, is that they need to
Yeah.
finalize this and get this submitted to DWR.
And then it goes out for public comment? Or
No, at that point, then, once it's submitted to DWR, then it's working with DWR to, refine anything in the work plan to their satisfaction, and then we move forward. So it's really, we need, if there's any feedback, it would have to happen in the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Thank you.
Does that sound right?
In a
And
way, we're
so
kind
I
of lucky.
gave you a copy the 30th. Could you, I guess, I can email it out.
Because I'm sorry, I'm gonna be bad with names for a while. You mentioned that this draft that we have, and I got it off the internet, isn't the most up to date, because there was like some
No,
3.3.
there's a few edits.
So you'll email that to us so we can review?
I could email that this afternoon to Emma.
Okay.
So we have, so what they're doing now is today was the deadline for any comments from the coordinating committee to come in on this draft. And then they will turn it around on June 30th. They will distribute the final draft, and then I can email that out to everyone. And then we would have basically 1 week to get comments back, and then it's going to DWR.
Now, Leah's already influenced this draft with some changes that popped up yesterday, so we have been tweaking.
We've had like 3 4-hour meetings at least with the coordinating committee, each IRWM, and we have beat this thing from one end of the room to the other. So we are really down to final tweaks, move this over here. Did you hear us when we said move the capacity forward? But it's not in the schedule, but it's in the budget. We're down to like making sure that the proposal's internally consistent and tight. And so DWR's, I'm like, well, you missed this and you didn't have this hooked to this. And that's kind of where we are in this thing. So if you have a huge red flag, boy, get to us like right away. But otherwise, if there's things that you just think we ought to be emphasizing a little harder or faster, that's kind of where we're at. Because it was really something to get a group that's never worked together. And these Sierra region people, they're not used to like clubbing up right away, so.
That's an understatement.
And so it was like herding everybody in a corral.
It's almost unfathomable.
I still think it's a miracle.
But everybody knows they've got communities they just haven't had time to get their hands around and are difficult to work with, and we've made it really clear not all the problems are pipe and wire. There's just how do you keep your accounting straight? How do you make sure your boards are educated? How do you take care of the people when it's one person and they get sick and they're supposed to be managing this thing on the side? And just practical. And we're dealing with places where they have